Oh, yeah, still the button down for about 2 seconds.
Oh, the red button. Okay. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I'd like to welcome you to 2019 Muncie, Indiana, first ever National Black Caucus presidential debate. We're going to open it up by asking our candidates to give us 2 minutes each of a short introduction of themselves. And then we're going to move on, starting the debate. As of now, we're going to start off with the debate because our guest speakers are running late. Unfortunately, they are stuck in traffic, so we're going to have to keep the program going, and we're going to just work with it the way it is. Here we go. We have 2 moderators, which is Trehan Cruz and Robin Harris. We have a mistress of ceremony, which would be Felina. She will host the program. And our candidates are aware that we are on a very short time limit, so everyone has 60 seconds to answer a question. I will be on the timer, so I'll let you know when we get to 60 seconds. Anyone in the audience that might have questions, Jill, we have cards on the table. Jill, would you please stand on your chairs? Cards on your chairs. Jill is going to stand up so you know who she is. Jill will collect your cards and give them to Gary so that the questions can be asked in a normal pattern. And also, we're going to move along. We're going to have a sign to warn each candidate how many seconds they have left to talk. And then we'll be moving on to the guest speakers. They should be here at the end by then. Okay, thanks a lot. Trehan, you're up first.
Okay, so for 50 years, the status quo in American politics has taken the black vote for granted. So we're here to discuss issues that are important to the black community. The black community is going to be a very big, important part of who becomes president in the 2020 election. So we're going to over the course of the next few months, we're going to be doing the best that we can to get Green Party candidates in front of the black community so they can hear the Green Party presidential candidates' platforms and point of views and how they want to solve the solutions that they have to the issues in the black community. So we're going to start out with 2 minutes. We're going to give 2 minutes for opening candidate statements, and we will start with David Rose.
All right, thank you. I'm really glad to be here at the Black Caucus event. And first I want to say that we're on stolen land that belongs to indigenous people here. My name is David Gould. I live in Massachusetts. I'm a revolutionary anti-imperialist activist. I've been an active member of the Green Party since 2003. I'm an anti-war activist, basically, and seeking justice, reparations, and self-determination for Africans or black people is a central part of my anti-imperialist activism. Just like there are U.S. wars against Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Iran, Yemen, Venezuela, and many other countries, there's a genocidal U.S. war against African communities here in North America. And just like I oppose the Zionist occupation of all of Palestine, I oppose the U.S. occupation of all of North America and U.S. Apartheid, genocidal apartheid against indigenous people and African people here. And I became a candidate for the Green Party presidential nomination for, I guess, 3 reasons. I wanted to bring in more radical ideas into the discourse. And so one of the things is that the previous candidates were talking about cutting the U.S. military by 50%. And that's not good enough. We need to totally eliminate the U.S. military, cut the budget by 100%, because 50% or 25%, 10% of the U.S. military is going to destroy the world. And then second, as I said, the U.S. is an illegitimate white nationalist colony here, and we need to talk about shutting down the...
Hello, I'm Chad Wilson. I'm new to this debate stage. This is the first time I'm making it with you guys. I'm from Tennessee, Nashville. Nice to see everyone out. My whole platform has to do with really organizing the party. If we don't have a solid structure, a solid base, actually people that will feel comfortable coming to a party and feel like they're working for them and listening to them, then no matter how many these or whatever, it's not gonna work. Yesterday, I don't know if anybody's following what's going on in the Facebook, because right now the internet is the key to reaching people. We can go knock on doors, we can call people, but it's going to waste time if we go do the old stuff. We can hit the internet, hit people right away, social media. And there was a question posed that says if you have 2 minutes to talk to 6 million people or 3 million people, what are you going to say? The question was posed. It said, first question, are you going to introduce yourself, tell people your platform, and why they should vote for you? Or B, are you going to talk about the problems in the Green Party or other candidates? And I said C. I'm going to introduce myself and say that and map out why the toxic behavior in the party is keeping the party from growing. If you have people that are co-chairs actively keeping people off running, you have even people in campaigns writing nasty letters to people. The attitude, the energy is not where it needs to be. And as long as you sweep things under the rug and say, oh, that's just for the illusion of unity, nothing is ever going to get done. And I'm not an insider, and the insiders in this party are okay with being unethical, and that's the thing that really has to get rid of, the toxic people.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Hunter, and there is so much injustice in this country. I'm going to talk about the positive ways that we're going to change things for the better for all Americans. I am a Youngstown, Ohio school board member, and if you don't know, we're currently under a pernicious state takeover that has taken away choice and voice from our community and has impacted negatively a majority African American district in many ways. I am a former educator, a former lawyer, and I am an activist on a number of issues, including anti-fracking. And my activism as a whole has been focused on keeping justice at the center of governance. And that's what my focus is going to be in this campaign. And when I say justice, I'm talking about justice on a number of fronts. I'm talking about environmental justice. We're going to talk about ending pollution, ending fracking, bringing this country to the point where we have 100% renewable energy through the Green New Deal, but also through my campaign, the Green Path Forward, where we press the reset button on diplomacy. So we work with all those countries we're told are supposed to be our enemies, but that we need to collaborate with in order to save this planet. And of course, social, racial, and economic justice. We need to tackle environmental racism. We need to deal with educational racism. We need to deal with inequalities in the justice system, redlining, the genocide against black people at the hands of law enforcement. And we need to focus on that through our campaigns targeted people of color Bill of Rights. But we also need to heal those wounds through a reparative process. And so our campaign is very much focused on putting reparations at the front. Now, I have been a loud and proud voice in my community for equal opportunities, especially under the circumstances we're under with a state takeover. But it's not just something local to us, and that's part of why I'm in this campaign. It is a fight that Americans all over this country are experiencing, this massive disenfranchisement. And I'm here to put the focus where it needs to be on a national level, on equal opportunity for prosperity and for basic human dignity and respect for all Americans and indeed all human beings.
Hello, I'm Dennis Lambert. I'm not new to the Green Party either. I was cleaning out my closet, or my garage last week, and found some old campaign material. So out there on the tables, you'll find some of the earlier bumper stickers from my first campaign. My motto was, don't follow the sheep, vote for Lambert. So every time I've run as a Green because I come from a disenfranchised family. I grew up poor. One of 5 kids raised by a single mother whose only occupation could be a bartender or a waitress. We grew up on food stamps. We were hungry most of the time. Last week of the month, growing up on food stamps was the hardest week of your life. If you didn't have enough set back, then you had to find something else to eat. Fortunately, I grew up in the country, so we learned how to scavenge in the woods to get wild apples and anything else that we might be able to get together. But this is one of the reasons why I'm running, is I want to empower other people to run. I have no reason to be expected to be a candidate for any office, much less president, but I want to encourage other people to run, to take back their community from the political parties that are strangling our opportunities. Nobody can tell me that there's a difference between the Democrats and the Republicans when both of them are voting to increase the war chest. Nobody can tell me there's a difference between the Democrats and the Republicans when they vote for a tax break for the upper income and for corporations, while the poor and disenfranchised communities are starving on a daily basis. Nobody can tell me that the Democrats and the Republicans are this different when they refuse to raise minimum wage in over 15 years.
Hi everyone, how's everybody doing?
Good.
Thank you. Yeah. My name is Ian Schlackman, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and I really want to just talk a little bit about, I'll tell you my platform a little bit and then I want to tell you a story. So I'm a revolutionary socialist, I'm an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-colonialist. I come from Baltimore. Shout out Uhuru to those who know what that means. It basically means freedom in Swahili. Yes, that's right. And that's what we say when we greet each other, because we work in solidarity down there in Baltimore with other black working class parties. We don't just think we're the biggest guy on the block. When I ran for city council in Baltimore City, I came in second place in a 4-way race, but I lost that race. And I turned around and I said, well, where can we grow? Where can the party grow next? And there was a woman named Reverend Annie Chambers. She's a former Black Panther, and now she is my mentor, and she is my campaign manager. And she'd be mad at me for saying former, because she likes to say, there's no such thing as a former Black Panther. You're always a Black Panther. And she's still in the struggle. And I said to her, Reverend, let's get you elected to office. Where can we go next? And she said, RAB board. The Tenant Council and Public Housing has a board. They're not giving us a fair election. The Green Party can help us fight. And I said, this is where we need to go. So we marshaled our resources. We got down there. They did all kinds of crazy stuff to try to kick her off the ballot, gave people the wrong time for election day, signs that pointed different directions in the polling place, even put her opponent in the polling center. But the Green Party came in there in force, and we made sure they gave her a fair election, and she won. And now she's on the RAB board fighting Ben Carson and the Trump administration when they try to raise the rent on public housing. And she's fighting the Democrats when the Democrats try to close public housing in Baltimore City, saying it's too dangerous for people to live in public housing. Public housing is a proud institution that people fought and died to make sure that they could get. We have to fight for it no matter where it is. But the most amazing thing is now, we actually got a second RAB delegate elected in Baltimore City because people understand and know that the Green Party is there to fight for them. And now we're about to get a third RAB delegate elected. So now when people are saying, oh, they're about to close down public housing, they ask the Green Party to come in. And that's my story for you all. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Howie Hawkins, and I want to thank the Black Caucus for putting this forum together. I'm a recently retired Teamster. Before that, I was a construction worker, and because I don't have a time clock to punch at night, a lot of people around Fort Greens and people on the left around the country asked me to run. Wasn't in my plans, and I'm running as part of a team that's diverse in terms of race, and gender, and sexual orientation, and age, and geography. So it's not just me that's up here running for president, it's part of a team. I've been an activist since the 1960s. I came up in the San Francisco Bay Area when the movement was capital T, capital M, the movement, civil rights, anti-war, got involved later in unions, the environmental struggles, got involved in helping form the Green Party in 1984. 35 years ago, it's time for us to step up because the two major parties have left us with a big mess. The Greens in New York have asked me to run 3 times for governor. We got ballot lines out of those 3 runs. And that's probably one of the reasons why the other folks asked me to run for president. So I'm emphasizing 3 life or death issues. The climate crisis, we all know about that in this room. The climate strike today, I stopped by Indianapolis and Muncie, all over the world, people were out there today. Inequality. Inequality kills. We have a 20-year life expectancy gap between our richest and poorest counties. It's getting worse. Democratic and Republican administrations, they have no program. We're calling for an economic bill of rights, reparations, and other things to really deal with inequality. The third thing is the new nuclear arms race. We got out of the treaties, we're modernizing the weapons, we're right on the brink of disaster. So we're calling for no first use, unilateral disarmament to a minimum credible deterrent, and then get serious about this treaty to a treaty for the prohibition of nuclear weapons with the other nuclear powers. I'm out of time, but the other big part of my campaign is party building, building unity among the Greens and on the left.
Please give the candidates a round of applause. So we have 3 questions that that the Black Caucus has for the candidates, then we'll take questions from the audience. And the first question, we're going to start with Howie, is what will you do if elected president of the United States? So if you were president in 2020, what would you do to stop police brutality?
Well, first thing is I reinstate those consent decrees that Trump repealed in Ferguson and Baltimore and other cities. I make sure my city of Syracuse, which has been on a federal consent decree since 1980, to have the police force represent the community in terms of race. The cities have people of color. This consent decree is now what? Almost 40 years old, and over 90% of the cops are white and they live out of state. Out of the city. So there's a lot of things we can do. The federal government, whenever there's a violation of anybody's, but particularly we got to focus on what's happening to black people and other people of color, there's civil rights or bodily harm, the Fed should come in with an independent investigation. You can't rely on the DA, even the Attorney General of the state. Too much of an old boys network there. So that's things the president can do right away by appointing an Attorney General that will take that approach. We got to clean up all our police forces. We saw what that force in the Border Patrol was saying on a Facebook post. That's throughout all our law enforcement. We got to change that.
First of all, I just want to say my campaign is really about growing the party, especially in urban, underrepresented areas that, let's be honest, people don't really trust the Green Party. We haven't really been out in solidarity as much as we could be. And so it's up to folks like me to be out there on the street making sure people understand that we want to work with you, we want to recognize your leaders and help them get elected. Now, I've done a lot of work on community control of police, and I can tell you that it can't be a civilian review board, it can't be a civilian review board with subpoena power, it's got to be community control of police. And community control of police means something special when Green says it, or at least when I say it. It means that the community literally should have the power to fire or to kick a police officer out of their district. 9 times out of 10, the community knows who in the community, what police officer is a crazy racist. They got neo-Nazi tattoos and other crazy stuff. They're scaring children. They're running down dirt bikers. The community knows. You go to a community meeting, they will tell you, this officer's no good, but this officer we want to give overtime to. Communities need to have a direct fiscal say in this officer's fired. That's it. That's how we need to do this. 30 seconds. No,
That was 10 seconds.
I was 10 seconds. Okay, well, I guess.
I
guess okay.
Okay, stop for a second. We're gonna do this whole first round 1 minute. I'm gonna increase it to 2 minutes after this round, only because it would not be fair to Ian and Howie. So we're gonna continue at 1 minute just for this round, and then I'll increase the time. Go ahead.
And could you repeat the question? How would we end racism in the United States?
No, police brutality.
Police brutality. Oh, well,
Presidential action.
well, the press release I sent out a couple weeks ago called.
If you were elected president,
Yes.
if you were the president of the United States, what would you do?
What would I do to end police brutality? Okay. One of the things as part of my platform is to end all wars, would be to end the drug war, which is obviously the most racist war that we are conducting in the United States. The prisons show the evidence of that. 2 weeks ago, I put out a press release about white supremacy and how we need to abolish it. And I would create an executive order to oust any white supremacists from any position in the federal government and encourage the states to do the same. We did the same with the communists, you know, back in the 50s and early 60s, so we could easily do it with the racists. That's all. I don't need to say any more than that.
Okay, if they somehow allowed me to become president of the United States, I would declare that the United States is being shut down. A white nationalist United States is no more, and we're turning over all the power to African and other oppressed people. And as far as police brutality, I'm a member of I'm a longtime supporter of the Black is Back coalition. I support their 19-point political agenda for black self-determination, and I'm for black community control of the police. We have to, the police force in the U.S. are a colonial occupation force in black communities. They need to be withdrawn from the black communities. The black communities need to have their own committees to develop a police force that helps them instead of, you know, oppressing them. And
the Cannabis Coalition, that's what I'm doing on my campaign. There's more people in jail for cannabis than all violent crimes combined. Blacks and minorities are 4 to 5 times as likely to be arrested, even though whites and blacks use at the same rate. And of course, we know once you're in the system or when you're the longer sentencing and all the bells and whistles that go with it, the war on drugs has been an absolute disaster. And I think that the first wave of reparations should start with the war on drugs, because it's a way to find out how people's families, and not just the people that are put in jail for the BS, but the people's families can have some sort of payback too for the misery that they were caused. So I look at this as like a butterfly effect, as Back to the Future type thing, right? We have to think forward dimensionally, like Doc Brown says. It's like prohibition. You know, when you make something illegal, then you say, okay, here's the playing field that blacks or whatever that people and
Time.
Now, part of this problem is that we do not have enough black folk in leadership, including in the police force. Another part of this problem is a lack of equal access to justice, so that people who perpetrate this against people of color don't feel like there are going to be consequences. So we have to have strict laws and enforcement for liability to hold law enforcement accountable for their abuses. No more of these nonsense show trials and acquittals. I've seen it far too many times. And through our Department of Justice, we're going to make sure that we hold people accountable. We need power to be given directly to the people, to have direct oversight over the police force. And those who are engaging in racial profiling, we need to get them on out of there. If we see a clear pattern of targeting, we need to handle that and we need to nip it in the bud. Accountability is going to be key under my administration.
Can we ask the next question from the audience? No, I'm saying, can we do the next one from the audience? And then that one.
Okay, our next question is, what role does the electric car have in the future? It's kind of a twofold question. What role does mass transit have for the future? And I think the latter question would probably really gear more towards what this caucus is trying to represent and present. And we could start on this end with Mr. Hunter.
I would say that electric cars, electric transportation, and mass transit have a large role to play in the future. We have to make sure that transportation is accessible to everyone on an equal level. And in my community in particular, there's a reliance on mass transit on the part of minority communities, more so than other residents. And that speaks to me about the economic disparities, but the fact that in our community, in a lot of communities, transportation just doesn't cut it. Public transportation just doesn't cut it for everyday needs, shows how much those minority communities are being neglected. So we need to fund mass transit, we need to improve the reach of mass transit, we need to fund and support electric cars, electric automobiles, so that people have access to alternatives to gas guzzlers that are polluting our planet. I would say that personally, I do drive an electric car, and I find it more economical. But we have to cut through all of the corporate naysayers who have their hands in America's pocket and have the government with a chokehold forcing them to aid and abet their polluting of this planet. So we need to subsidize that as a country, as a government. We need to make sure that we promote and support renewable energy alternatives, and we have to have a robust mass transit system all across this country, not just in every urban area, but all across this country, so that everyone has an alternative to the mass pollution of this planet through gas using cars.
100% renewable energy is the key to take it there, and solar energy. In Germany, I believe it's Germany, there's a Wuppertal. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of a Wuppertal. You heard of that? It's a suspension type mass transit thing, and it's lasted over 100 years, and it's very, I guess, the maintaining, and they just redid stuff. It's a very, very cool thing to look at. It's very popular, and that's something similar to that. I know if you guys don't know what it is. Weird word. I just learned by a scientist. Was that my name? Oh. So mass transit, yeah, I mean, electric cars are coming. I'm assuming at some point they're going to be, automated or.
You have to stop this 2 minutes.
Oh.
Okay, well, electric cars.
Yeah.
Electric cars are important. I want to point out in China they're transitioning to having people have electric cars and not allowing gas cars, and it's important that we stop vilifying the governments of other countries and being like at war against the world, and that we cooperate with other countries on these kind of things, on more stopping pollution and global warming, and we need to find like more efficient ways to produce electricity, better solar panels and more efficient batteries, ways to store the electricity for the cars, and we need high-speed rail and just a lot more, we need to put a lot more money into public transportation instead of war and destructive stuff. Like public transportation should be free and convenient, so like people don't need to have a car so that they can easily use the public transportation to need to get where they're going. How much more time do I have? So I wanted to briefly get back to when I first said the last question is we need a lot more money going into bringing economic development and things into the black community instead of spending money on having police occupations to oppress black people and prisons to put black people and enslave them in concentration camps.
I just want you all to know, you can literally speak until the phone goes off. Once the phone goes off, that's a full 2 minutes.
All right, well then, I also wanted to apologize for misspeaking and saying I'm a member of the Black is Back Coalition because I'm a supporter. I've been a supporter for a long time, but the membership is for African people, and I apologize for misspeaking.
Ready?
No, I'm not ready.
Okay.
I was giving him his 45 seconds, but he handed on us, so that's okay. So you go back to 2 minutes.
Okay, when we talk about mass transportation, the largest problem I see with mass transportation is there's not enough of it, and it's not convenient for a lot of the people who need it. I don't know if you guys ever saw the documentary series that the guy who did Super Size Me did. He spent a month in Columbus and found out that the buses in Columbus, Ohio don't run after 8 o'clock. So this is a major flaw in a public transportation system, and where I live, it's a highly rural area. We have one cab company that has 3 cabs, so if anybody was to expect to get anywhere on time and back home on time, there's no possibility. We do have a loose system of public transportation where a bus will take you from Ashland, Kentucky over to Huntington, West Virginia if you need to go to the VA or the hospital over there. But once again, it's a convenience issue. A lot of times people will have to book it up to a week in advance before they can get this transportation. I definitely see a future where mass transportation system will be able to take us to virtually everywhere we need to go. The stopgap, the thing to keep us getting towards that direction would be adopting and encouraging the purchase and use of electrical cars. Part of my renewable platform that I'm still working on, some of the kinks on, is I have a suggestion that anybody who has a primary car that is more than 20 years old would get automatically $10,000, $15,000 credit towards the purchase of a hybrid or electric car. This would go a long way to helping people in the poor communities being able to purchase something that could benefit them directly and immediately.
Good? All right, great. All right. I actually appreciate Ms. James for giving us 2 minutes, because she's right, that wasn't enough time to answer the first question. I do just want to jump back to the first question for a second. So I also think it's important to know that I'm a prison abolitionist. I believe that prisons are just wrong by nature. We should be reformed, making sure people are trying to reform folks into becoming upstanding citizens again, never actually just impunitively imprisoning them. It's a terrible idea. I also want to mention that I think this is really important to say. On the first day in office, I would pardon all non-violent drug offenses, all of them, every single one of them. If someone needs treatment, they should go to treatment. And then finally, I also want to make the hard sell. Well, I'll go back to the electric car for a second. I'll come back to that. So this is a very interesting question about the electric car and mass transit. I can tell you that as a revolutionary socialist, I have a very different view of this. I feel that we should take the military budget and basically use it to reinvest in infrastructure completely in the United States and spend money on science and technology and investing. Because as some of the candidates said, our electric car facilities and stuff like that are way behind even places like China. Our solar panel factories are not up to date. So this would be a revolutionary change. And what you would see is a real decent mass transit infrastructure in the US. Our mass transit infrastructure, our long-range trains, our Amtrak system is a joke. It's the laughingstock of the world. We should be investing way more into public mass transit all throughout the country. And the idea would be that we don't need cars altogether. A bus should come regularly for you at your convenience. That would be the world that I want to live in. And on top of that, because I'm a revolutionary socialist, I will just say this. If it's a need, like transportation is a need, I need to see my family, it should be free. End of story, it should be free. To travel anywhere I need to go, it should be completely free. Just like we're calling for other things in a human rights-based economy to be free, such as housing, healthcare, good education, food, shelter. All of these things should be a human right. Every single thing one of them mentioned right now should be a human right. We shouldn't be battling each other on the street and fighting the corporate ladder to get those things. Thank you.
Well, I say the future of the electric car is supplementary to an electrified rail system, electrified freight, high-speed intercity rail, and electrified light rails networking all our metropolitan areas. And then electric cars and trucks, delivery vehicles, are the end of the line once stuff has been brought around and people have been brought around by the electrified rails. But that's not going to happen under capitalism. We need eco-socialism. We need to take democratic public ownership of the energy system, because the Koch brothers and Exxon and GM and Ford and National Grid, they're not going to reinvest their fossil fuel earnings into renewables or electric cars or electrified rails. We need a nationalized railroad system, and we need to rebuild our manufacturing. The federal government needs to do it like we did during World War II, to turn industry on a dime into what they call the arsenal of democracy to defeat the fascists. It took over a quarter of industry. We need to do nothing less to make these changes. Now, I've come out, or I'm about to come out with, we've been talking about a budget for an eco-socialist Green New Deal. We got 27 trillion, 27 trillion over 10 years. It's about 60% more than Bernie Sanders had put forward for his plan. The other Democrats aren't serious. Bernie, seriously, he gets less because he's going to finish in 2050. Climate science says we got to finish in 2030. I was at a demonstration before that debate in Detroit, and the theme of the demonstration was make Detroit the engine of the Green New Deal. We should rebuild all our Rust Belt cities. I'm in one in Syracuse. I expect Muncie's lost a lot of factories. We need to rebuild them. We don't even have a machine tool industry in this country, and that's the core of intermediate and consumer goods manufacturing. We can only do that through the federal government, public ownership, democratically controlled. That's why we need eco-socialism to do any of these things.
I'm going to ask them to go back to how we just addressed, but a simple fact is they say that we cannot save the environment. It's too late now. So I want to give you all a fair chance to talk about that, and I'm going to set it for 2 minutes because I think it's important to say, can we really save this environment, this planet now? Or is it really too late? And if we can, why do you think we can? You think we can here? How and why?
You point
Give
at
me a second, let me see.
Monica?
Yeah, we're gonna start with you, but give me a second to hit the timer. Start now.
All right, look, we are past time. When I was the first candidate to run for a Green New Deal in 2010, running for governor in New York. It was the Hawkins prosperity plan versus the Cuomo austerity plan. We're coming out of the Great Recession. It was an economic bill of rights plus a massive investment in renewable energy. And here we are 10 years later. We chose 2020 because that's what the climate science said about the carbon budget that the rich countries got to do. And here we are a decade later. Now 2030, it's going to take that long. The difference is, it's still possible. It's still possible. The difference is, we got to draw more carbon out of the atmosphere now by afforestation, organic agriculture, rebuilding wetlands and mangroves and other habitats that can draw carbon out of the atmosphere into the biosphere. That's why part of the Green New Deal budget I put out there is a huge civilian conservation corps to do those things. We may also have to industrially accelerate the geological carbon cycle. That's where carbon fixes in rock with weathering. You can do that. You basically put carbonated water in basaltic rock. They did it in Iceland. And we may have to do that because the scenarios, like James Hansen, our foremost climate scientist, said, we can get back down below 350 parts per million carbon, the safe zone, by the end of the century, and hope these positive feedback loops don't kick in. But we got to get to 100% clean energy, zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 in the rich countries, and then start drawing the carbon down. It's still possible, but it's like mission impossible because we got these two parties in charge of the government. The Green Party's got to step up in the 2020s. We got to elect thousands of people. We got to start local and build up. But look, you know, they've been dawdling since the Kyoto thing. I'm going. My 2 minutes up?
Yes, sir.
Okay. They didn't hear you back there, but okay. But you get the point.
All right.
Okay, this is a really, really good question because there is another candidate out there, and I know some folks are tuning in on Twitter, and they're always asking me to juxtapose myself with this other candidate. And there is one candidate that's actually talking about that it's too late for climate change and it's time for do geoengineering. And I absolutely oppose geoengineering. I think it's a terrible idea. There's Bill Gates, he wants to stop hurricanes with robots or lasers or something. There's genetically modified food folks that think geoengineering is part of their growth belt too. It's horrible. We absolutely can't do it. What we should be doing is investing more in science, right there. I'll tell you that right now. But the other thing I really want to mention right now is that our we cannot do this alone. It's so important to understand that. We need to internationally engage, especially the main superpowers that we have. So I'm talking about Russia, I'm talking about China, and I'm even talking about India as well. And it's so easy, but we never see how to get these folks to cut back on emissions. Number one polluter in this country is the military. If we simply sat down with China and Russia and said, our military budget is the biggest, we are going to cap it and shrink it as long as you do the same and you do the same, they would take that deal in a heartbeat. They take that deal in a heartbeat. We understand, I think globally, that we are spending ourselves into a military capitalist cycle that is going to kill the planet, literally going to kill the planet. The only way is a new international realignment, re-engagement. The only way to do this is through a national force. We need to think about seriously calling for a peace force, but not just a peace force, but a climate force. One that actually helps people, unlike the Trump administration, when the Bahamas was devastated, they told folks, no, you can't come up. The Green Party's for open borders, and I'm for open borders no matter what, that's for sure. Because this is a climate catastrophe that can happen to any of us. I live on the East Coast. How do you think I feel about the climate emergency? This is for real. Thank you.
I'm going to start off with a quote from one of my heroes, George Carlin. He said, the planet's going to be all right, the rest of us are fucked. Look, we will only survive if we begin mitigation procedures immediately. One of my parts of my platform is the renewable infrastructure investment, and this is one of the things that this does. It creates smaller local energy generation locations within the communities that are community owned. That way, after 5 years, when they pay off the investment for the materials, for solar, for wind, for hydrokinetic, whatever it would be, a mixture of those, they'll be actually getting a positive income from that, from their customers, from their community, and they'll be able to lower their tax rates. Not only that, but it makes a safer, secure grid. Right now, all the security experts are saying that Russia and China have software that could turn off our electricity at any second. With the smarter grid that I'm proposing, we will actually not have that threat. When the power goes out in Cleveland, New York City will still have lights. Another part of my renewable infrastructure is taking into account the agricultural systems that we're working under now. A lot of farms are monocultures where they're only growing one crop a year and only one type of crop. What we need to do is invest, if we want to make ethanol a more realistic fuel for the future, is get these farmers to start planting hemp, which will sequester 4 times as much carbon as any tree will. It will grow 15 feet in 3 months and can replace 4 acres of forest with 1 acre of hemp for wood products, or for paper products rather. So investing, I don't think it's too late, but we need to start working on it.
Okay, so global warming and the carbon emissions, they are a very real problem, but they're not, and getting rid of the military is something we need to really do because they're one of the biggest emitters. But even worse problems that are causing the mass extinction we see are the geoengineering that's been going on for 70 years. And they say that they're using geoengineering to try to save the environment, but it's really destroying the environment and poisoning the soils, poisoning animals and people, and poisoning the soils, so it's impossible to do agriculture. And also the glyphosate and the GMOs and the electromagnetic radiation that's poisoning us all and killing the bees, and they're like bringing out the 5G soon. We got to stop that. And I don't know if it's still possible to save the environment and the world, but the only way to do it is to have a revolutionary change in the power structure and shut down the United States and give all the resources as reparations to African and indigenous people, and get people who have like a different mindset, who don't have a white nationalist imperialist mindset in power, so that they can channel the resources into finding a way out of this for all of us.
All right. This is about survival. We need a contingency plan, and I think that's what the Green Party can do, because it covers the basis. And something like the Black Panther, the way that they had their system set up about how they fed people and their whole process. I have something called the Green Guarantee that I'm working on. What it is, it's organizing all of our resources, all of our skill sets to be able to make things happen. With all the burned down houses, well, not just burned, but broken down houses, especially through the country, through the rural area, and in the inner city, we can organize these resources. We can take the renewable material, we can take plastic, we can 3D print, there's so many things we can do, and we can do that together. In fact, my plan has a private sector part to it too, where we can organize as a party and make these things happen. And if I do win the nomination, I want to do a Green Party caravan plan, which is we're putting people on the road to go and actually talk to people. We're going to get music going. We're going to do a marching band, so anytime there are any marches or any protests, we can send somebody out there. We can be present always. But this is about power, and it's about accountability and oversight and transparency. That's something that is the reason why nothing's changing. Is the reason why everybody kind of sweeps everything on the rug, including us. But we have to ask the question: what are the establishment? What are these families? What are these top 1% people? What are they willing to do to keep their power? Because are they willing to take us to war? Are they willing to blow up things with nuclear? We have a lot of things that could end us quicker than just the climate change, including, a solar flare can come anytime and knock out a bunch of shit, and then we're helpless. So we need a contingency plan in order to have these, small things.
Yes, we can save this planet. Yes, we will. Yes, we must. I'm not sure why you would run for president, let alone the Green Party partner, if you didn't think we can save this planet. We need to end our use and extraction of fossil fuels. We all understand that this has to happen. We got to do it by 2030 or before, and we need to do it internationally, folks. We have to build those bridges with other countries: China, Russia, Iran. These are countries that have large carbon emissions, and they're countries that we need to build better relationships with so that we can solve this problem together. We also need to have bold, out-of-the-box solutions to have a comprehensive effort to resolve this issue the planet faces. We need to end our use of single-use plastics. Cradle to grave, they add a massive amount of pollution. War, as has already been mentioned, adds to pollution. But we just had fires in the Amazon. Do people here understand why that happened? The greed of ranchers and the government supporting them led to that. And the loss of trees immeasurably affects the environment. But it also points out to another source of pollution. Livestock raising and the overabundance and the appetite for livestock is killing this planet. We need to end the culture of encouraging overconsumption. Our livestock consumption is massive and it is going to kill us. The methane pollution, but also through the health effects. So we can save this planet, we can tackle the myriad ways in which pollution is unfortunately imperiling us all, and we can also have a healthier citizenry by bringing an end to this culture that we as a country have fostered here and across the world of overconsumption in terms of plastics, in terms of disposable goods, in terms of food that is killing us and killing the planet as a whole.
Okay, our next question is, NARC, the National African American Reparations Committee. Point number 5 is we want resources for health, wellness, healing of black families and communities. How will the single payer health care, which is part of the Green Party platform, address systematic racism in healthcare industries?
Okay, it's kind of a two-part question there. So first of all, I just want to say we absolutely need reparations. Reparations have to happen for African Americans, former slaves of all kinds, and for Native Americans as well. And we get to that by doing a Truth and Reconciliation Committee with the goal of the committee to be a recommendation with other groups that are already working on this project about how much money we are actually talking about. Money has to be on the table. And then the black community can figure out how best to spend that money. And we've done this before in this country. Slaveholders actually got reparations when their slaves were set free. On top of that, Jewish Americans like myself were given some form of reparations. But, you know, the community decided how best to spend that. And that has to happen with the African American community and the Native American community as well. Now, in terms of universal health care, I mean, universal health care is fantastic. Green Party's been talking about it forever. But I think now is the time. All the Democrats are talking about universal health care, taking the for-profit industry out of health care. We got to get them thinking about the next steps. Why do we need landlords? Maybe we should be taking landlords out of the equation and giving everyone guaranteed housing. Why do we need agriculture businesses? Why not local farms? Why not local farms with farm hubs? Farmers markets. Why do we need big agriculture? We got to start taking all these big, giant companies out of the equation. We can nationalize them. We can make them that the unions are in charge of them. There's all different kinds of things we can do. You know, when Boeing famously tried to leave Seattle, Kshama Sawant, revolutionary socialist on the city council there, said, workers should take it over. If you're going to leave, we should take it over. Simple as that. And on top of that, Barack Obama actually bailed out the auto industry. The U.S. government owned the auto industry for a small period of time. But rather than actually just take it and say, we can make whatever we want with these, we can give everyone good jobs with this company, they gave it right back to the shareholders. Because that's what capitalism does. That's what capitalism is all about. Time? Okay, thank you. Who's going next? Go this way?
No, we're going to go.
We go this way? Okay.
Well, I support Medicare for All. That is actually one of the 4 parts of my platform for the campaign. I'm actually active on the Single Payer Action Network in Ohio. We are finally getting legislation in front of our state house to adopt a Medicare for All program in the state of Ohio. Funding, a lot of people ask about the funding, but a lot of the research shows that with less than 7% tax on employment salaries, that we could cover everybody with health care. My Medicare for All program, unlike the Democrats or some other people's, includes vision care, includes dental care, includes hearing care, and includes mental health, which is probably the largest gap in our healthcare system right now. You know, if people are saying that these gun crazy people that are going out there shooting up people that have mental health issues, then that is something that our government needs to step in and start funding. We are celebrating, well, not necessarily celebrating, but last month marked the 400th anniversary of slavery landing on the North American continent. know, if you don't think that 400 years of oppression by a system that you have no power in has no effect on you, then apparently you're not paying very much attention. And mental health component to our Medicare for All program is very important. And I don't know how much I can stress this, but the trauma of growing up underprivileged or disadvantaged carries on through your life and affects you throughout your entire life. It bleeds into your relationships with other people, and we need to make sure that people have access or some sort of help with the mental anguish that comes through the oppression that a lot of our society is seeing.
Okay, well, as far as reparations go, the amount of reparations that the United States and white Americans owe to African people is in tens of trillions of dollars. There was a study, there was a tribunal in 1982 in Brooklyn that said $4.1 trillion just for the amount that was produced by slaves during the chattel slavery period. There was a very recent study that said it was $14.2 million for the labor of the slaves during the chattel slavery. It's $1 trillion, 14.2 trillion. But that's, there's been more oppression since then, and we still have African people in prisons picking cotton as slaves in Louisiana and other southern states today. So we need to stop that. And on healthcare, like paying for the healthcare is only one aspect of it. We also need good healthcare. The corporate healthcare, even if you can afford it, there's like not much good healthcare. Like pharmaceuticals and can't be determined by capitalist corporations who are producing toxic vaccines and medications, psychiatric medications, things that poison people, and they do it for a profit, not to really try to help people. And we need to socialize healthcare development so that we have good healthcare. And we also need to stop all of the corporations from poisoning us with the geoengineering and chemtrails I mentioned before, and the glyphosate and GMOs they're making us eat, and all these things, like we're dying because we're being poisoned by greedy capitalist corporations who are trying to kill us, and we need to stop that.
Gaddafi had a program in Libya before Obama and Clinton got a hold of it, where somebody that worked for the government, healthcare, they work for 5 years, they pay for the schooling, and they work, and then they have an option to stay along with the government or move into the private sector. I believe that's how it works. But I always like the idea in understanding how we're supposed to organize these resources. And that's something, again, I keep going back to, because we have everything we need in order to do it. Well, I'm sure we have doctors or lawyers. We have people that have all these expertise in the party. So we need to pull more people so we have a Rolodex, so we can have a way of distributing this and giving education to be able to utilize the internet. The internet is everything now, because anything we need to do, in fact, we need Star Trek type things. We need to put money into innovation to where the diagnostic is nothing. You can find out what what you've got or what's going on, and then you've got the preventive measures. And of course, we talk about the food, land, water, air. All these things are screwing people up. And these people are corrupt. They don't care. Everything is for sale in this country, in the world. So it's important to understand that. But in what he had mentioned too, the trauma. There's a generational trauma that a lot of people don't talk about, and how it's passed on from family member to family member to family member. And these are the kind of things that the pressure that society can put on you is immense, and I don't think people understand or are able to comprehend, what that means. Where every turn, every step you go, regardless if you can walk down the road, but you feel closed off. And we have to understand human emotions and approach people from that human emotion, and understand the programming, how they got there, how they feel the way they feel, And, your turn.
No single-payer healthcare will not resolve systemic racism in healthcare. It absolutely will not. Now, in theory, it will provide greater economic access to healthcare because we know corporate Obamacare does not work, high premiums for very little yield. But here is the issue. We're talking about systemic racism. I live in a part of this country where we don't even have a supermarket, let alone a clinic or a nearby hospital. What good is single-payer healthcare going to be to you when you don't have a hospital nearby or a clinic that you can trust, that you can go to, or the animals will come enough time to actually save your life? It's not going to help you all that much, so we really need to invest in making sure that we have a better healthcare infrastructure, including in underserved minority communities. And now this is where being the only African American on stage helps, because my mother tells me all the time she doesn't want to go to the doctor because of what happened with the Tuskegee experiment, where the government experimented on black people. We need greater sensitivity for minorities in healthcare. Studies have shown that doctors are reluctant to give painkillers to blacks compared to whites. We need more measurable, accessible standards for accountability to deal with the inequality in care, and we need consequences. And we also need more people of color in healthcare and in healthcare management to prevent some of that systemic racism, and that is a combination of dealing with both educational deficits in this country as well as healthcare deficits.
Yeah, single payer just means publicly funded. And if that's all we change, we replace insurance companies with one public company, it's not going to deal with the institutional racism in the system. We had a bill back in the 70s. Single payer, as it's put forward by the Democrats now, was Kennedy's bill, national health insurance. Nixon had a bill that's basically Obamacare. And Ron Dellums had a bill that he wrote with the Medical Committee for Human Rights. Those were the medics out of the civil rights movement that put people back together after they've been beat up. And that's what we need. It's not only publicly funded, it's publicly administrated, and it's publicly delivered. In other words, it's a structure for community control. We adopt a single payer that's on the table now, it'll be very centralized like the Medicare we got now. The National Health Service bill that Ron Dellums put forward, it's called the Josephine United States Health Service bill. Barbara Lee carried it until the Obamacare fight happened and they dropped it. That's why we need Greens in Congress. And what it provides for is elected boards at the local level, so that, as Daryl pointed out, we don't have clinics. We don't have grocery stores too, that's true. But if you have control, then you have a say in what happens. Beyond that, and Daryl mentioned this, there's bias among the doctors. They don't treat black and white people the same, white doctors. That's another reason for community control. It's a reason to organize basically affirmative action, occupational ladders where people in the hospitals and the healthcare, you notice the top people, the doctors are white mostly, and the people who are orderlies and home health aides and janitors are black. There should be occupational ladders so people in that system can move up in their career. And then we also got to socialize the drug companies. They are totally irresponsible. We've seen how they jack prices up on people who need insulin. They don't cost more, they just can make more money that way. We shouldn't do that. And they are not doing the basic research, like we have these drug-resistant diseases, and they're not doing that because they're looking for the next Viagra to make a lot of money.
Okay, we're going to take a break for right now, so let's just stop for 5 minutes and we'll regroup after that. Thank you.
we have Kim Flores, we have Chairman Fred Hampton, we have L.Greer in Jerry, we have Bishop Fred Hampton, and then we'll end for tonight. And I'd like to thank you all for coming out. So let's get started and let our president candidates come back in and have a seat, and we'll get back to the questions. Thank you. Okay. And because our time has been shortened again, we're back to 1 minute answering questions. I'm sorry to everyone, but we are back on the time frame. Thank you.
Mr. Hunter and Mr. Hawkins. We're going to start this question with David. The question from our audience is, we'd like to know if you would denounce white supremacy, and how, if you were to be president. If you will denounce white supremacy, and how.
Well, yes, I denounce white supremacy. As I said, the United States is an illegitimate white nationalist colony here on stolen land and built on slavery and genocide. And I don't think it can be saved. We need a real change, and we can't be white nationalists. We need to shut down the USA and turn over power to the African and indigenous and other oppressed people. And you know, I see a lot of protests against the alt-right kind of neo-Nazi type people, and I can't stand those people too. But I'm not going to join with Zionists and with pro-war liberal Democrats to go protest the so-called fascist right wing, when our whole system is fascist. So that's what I want to say. And do I have more time? So okay. Well then, as I said, one of the reasons I'm running is to say that this whole system and the whole phony elections are phony, and we can't pretend that we're going to be elected and we're going to be part of the system and do moderate reforms. We need a real change. We need the candidates, our Green Party candidates, to be really revolutionary.
Of course, denounce white supremacy. I want to denounce bigotry. Anybody that feels like they're better than somebody because of the identity politics, and I think that's a big part of it. I think prejudice is built off ignorance. It's built off, and we talked about cannabis, or people being in jail for cannabis and all violent crimes combined. And remember, because blacks and minorities are 4 or 5 times as likely to be arrested, even though whites and blacks smoke at the same rate. Again, they report that on the news, and then they beat the fear drum, and then that's how they make white people fear. And the same thing they do with Islamophobia. Same thing when they need to separate and keep people fighting, or they need something going on. That's a big part of it. So I will absolutely denounce that, and especially identity politics, because we have people in our own party that when we are trying to articulate a valid criticism, they're quickly to throw the identity politics in somebody's face, as if someone, because of a woman or a person of color, can't be questioned for their actions.
Deeds matter more than words. So absolutely, I renounce white supremacy and its effect on me, my people, and our country as a whole. But what we need is system change, folks. We need to get rid of the white supremacist power structure. We need to end its effects upon housing, upon banking, and a major issue affecting people of color in this country is redlining. We need to strengthen disclosure laws. We need to institute anti-redlining laws, support community banks capitalized with public funds, support co-op credit unions, and support the extension of the Community Reinvestment Act, so that we encourage banks to help residents of low and moderate income communities and reduce redlining. We need to end it in education. We need to give the power back to the people to ensure that we have a truly equitable educational system. We need to end the new plantation system, mass incarceration in this country, fed by the failure of our educational system and fed by the failure of our justice system. The issues relating to access to justice, which we will help solve through a more robust public defender system. And we need to end this war on drugs in this country.
Yes, it's easy to denounce white supremacy. The question is, how do we defeat it? And I would argue that the answer to white supremacy and racism is black power for black people, brown power for brown people. The Rainbow Coalition that Fred Hampton Sr. talked about in Chicago. Every community should have power to control their own destiny. So we're talking about community control and ownership of the police, the schools, the housing, the businesses, so that people who have been racially oppressed are no longer subject to the decisions of racist gatekeepers. And they're the professional managerial class, employers, bankers, landlords, real estate agents, even union business agents in some cases, lawyers, judges, police, that whole professional managerial class, including politicians. We got to replace them too. So the key is to empower communities so they are not subject to the decisions of others. And then the whites can't be supreme. They're just going to take care of themselves like everybody else.
Is this the last question? No? Okay, I gotta say, I think the most glaring thing going on right now that speaks of white supremacy and enabling white supremacy by the government is the border camps. There are concentration camps on the border. Children are literally dying, and we have to immediately close those camps right away and call them what they are, which is concentration camps. Now, this is really important to me. As far as I know, I'm the only candidate that's actually called for a law that says that if you are spouting a racist, white supremacist ideology, neo-Nazi, or some sort of other sexist, misogynist misogyny philosophy, such as if you're going into a forum online and saying, I want to do terrible things to women, I want to do terrible things to minorities, that should be enough to get you arrested, full stop. There are whole websites out there dedicated to misogynist, horribly racist, sexist things. Just look at Gay Brigade. Look at what happened in El Paso. These folks are talking to each other on websites like 4chan and 8chan ahead of time. Why aren't the police monitoring this and shutting this down? It's absolutely insane. Nazi means one thing, to kill folks. That's what it means. That should be the red line right there.
I have denounced white supremacy and racism. In my press release of August 14th, I've also called on the Green Party and all associated state parties to immediately begin drafting and adopting a platform of anti-racism and anti-white supremacy. As a candidate for president, as I said earlier, one thing that I would do would immediately purge the government of white supremacists, the federal government of all white supremacists, and urge Congress to immediately enact legislation that will prevent white supremacists from holding any elected or any position in the government that is paid by our tax dollars. We don't need our tax dollars to continue supporting white supremacy like it has been through the drug war. I don't know what more I can say other than, we are all from the same genetic origins. We're all from Africa. We have to start treating each other like we're brothers and sisters, or we're all going to end up in the same ditch.
The next question is, and we'll start with Dennis, and then we'll start going this way. Do you support a universal basic income?
I'm still doing a lot of research on this, but I support it in concept. I'm really more about economic reform other than just another subsidy. I understand the concept behind it, but I can also see how it could easily become abused, where people who don't need that $1,000 a month or whatever the goal is for the UBI for whomever is running on that platform, that could be another way for landlords to raise the rent because, you're getting this extra $1,000 a month, and now we can charge you another $500 $1,000 for every adult in the household. I do see how it can be economically empowering. We certainly need to increase the basic income from people getting Social Security for disability and retirement, because I work with a lot of veterans and senior citizens who that is their primary income. So that definitely needs to be increased, and possibly that as part of UBI should be our focus.
Okay, yes, I absolutely support a basic income, universal basic income. Let me go through some of the reasons why. I think the most important reason is that the number one thing the government hates to do, Republican or Democrat, is to just put capital and resources right into the hands of poor working class people. So a basic income would do exactly that. You would be able to choose. I could not stretch a dollar the way public housing family can. I personally cannot do it. But I know that if we hand money directly to families that need it, individuals that need it, that they will choose what's best for them personally. That's why I believe in a universal basic income. Now, how would I fund my universal basic income? It's not with a tax on the poor. It is with defunding the military. The military annual budget is over $600 million, probably closer to $700 million. And that's just the budgeted amount. That's not all the extra money we put into for war. That easily $100,000, $200,000 could be used for a basic income guarantee day one. And it would end poverty in this country immediately. And that's the most important thing about it.
Yeah, I support a universal basic income as long as it's above poverty. This has been a demand since the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. It was in the Freedom Budget in 1966. It was in King's Poor People's Campaign. And that's got to be done. Now, I think the best way to do it, rather than what they call basic income grant that everybody gets, you give it to, Warren Buffett as well as the poorest person in the country. Better way is a negative income tax. You put your taxes in. If you're below the poverty line, you get a monthly check every month to bring you up to poverty. That's the more efficient way of providing that basic income. The other thing we got to watch out is that giving people income just above poverty and then not letting them work is a problem. The Greens had a slogan in Germany when they first came out: we want a fair distribution of work and income. So they were looking at ways, for example, to get 40 hours paid for 30 hours work, because the productivity gains since the 1970s have all gone to the top. That's why our wages have been flat and the 1% has been getting richer and richer. So we need to look at that. And then we need to start introducing things I can't have time to talk about.
Thank you.
Yes, I support universal basic income. Some people try to take a leftist position against it because it doesn't really change things, and I do think we need a change in power and a change in ownership, and we need workers to own the means of production, etc. But I do support economic human rights. So everyone has that economic human right to housing, to good food and water, to health care, to transportation. I could go on listing a lot of things people have a right to, and people also have a right to have some discretionary money that they can buy what they want with. So I support universal basic income, and it's also the economic human rights. They are part of the reparations. The reparations are on top of the economic human rights. Every person deserves all these economic human rights, and then people who have faced injustice need to get reparations money in addition to that.
I'm not there yet with the universal basic income. I think we have enough resources, enough things we can do, and that we need to do without, again, putting a central money on it. We own our labor, regardless of if anybody realizes it or not. All these people that, bring back the jobs, fuck those jobs, we go around them. The internet gives us the access to go straight to consumer. Right now, this is the first time in history that we can communicate with people all over the world, all over the country, and we can make things happen. So I'm more about, again, organizing our resources, starting co-ops. At Ocean's 11, if 5 people or 11 people now can collectively make something, create something, We need to be able to piece people together, create a product together, and we have the resources to do it. But for, there is UABI, and one of the concerns is about people abusing it. We have the technology for oversight. The internet gives us that, so.
I do support universal basic income, but when people live in food deserts, when unequal healthcare availability raises actual costs, when mass transit is hard to access and low reach, the reach of those dollars will also be unnaturally low. The idea of solving economic injustice simply by bringing some money back to the people without reining in the corporate abuse of this system is unrealistic. We need to end predatory lending practices. We need to forgive student loans. We need to provide free college to all. We need to provide free pre-K to all, and we have to increase access to housing. Yes, housing is a fundamental human right, and we need to revitalize our communities by supporting co-ops in our communities, particularly minority-owned businesses and co-ops, so that we give economic power back to the people. This is about empowerment, folks, not just bringing some of the money back and allowing an abusive corporate system to still abuse everyone.
Okay, thank you. This next question is somewhat twofold. Do you support compulsory education and public schools? And we'll start with Mr. Wilson, and then next David, and go from there.
What's the question again? Public schools? Do you support compulsory education in public schools?
I support education in whatever form it comes. I think, again, with the internet, with technology, we are able to create an education system that can reach people and educate them on things they need for life. And the problem with our system now is the things that we're being taught and trained is more about just going along and be good little sheep. And that's what we got to get out of. We got to get people to think of how to work for themselves, how to look at life, how to be the architect of the life that you want to build. I don't think people realize what technology we have right now. We can reach people on a mass level. There's no reason why the party should not be, overran with people. Right now, the political arena is so crazy, there's no reason why. And it comes back to, giving people the opportunity and the education, in the party, to understand how things go.
Okay, well, I support public schools, but they got to be different. We have this imperialist educational system that's designed to teach kids to think the wrong way, to believe in imperialism and capitalism as the best way to run the world, and it's particularly offensive in Black and indigenous communities where we have this white kind of education that ignores people's culture and puts them down. And schools in the United States they're designed to turn kids into basket cases, to upset and traumatize them and turn them into workers and not let them make a change in the world. And we've got to change that. We've got to have Black community control of the schools. We've got to have a different kind of education. So no, I do not support compulsory education with the current system.
I value my education, and most of it was a public school education. Unfortunately, the public school systems have now moved from actually teaching students to trying to force them to understand a test that they take once a year. I believe public school systems are really valuable in that they provide resources not only for the community in times of for extracurricular activities and entertainment, but it's also a pathway for our communities to build themselves. I believe in educational reform that would include teaching philosophy to high school students, junior high and elementary school students. I believe we need to have a more enriched education where people are learning more about a lot of different things instead of being prepared for a test and then not having any idea about what their future can hold after they get out of college. A lot of people go into college just because they're told that they need to go to college to get a better job. A lot of people are forced into those loans because of that.
Back in Baltimore, I worked with a group of African-American families that were trying to start a free school. And essentially, they found it to be nearly impossible. They simply could not get the resources together. But if you want to start a charter school, they'll let you do that in Baltimore City. If you want to homeschool, they frown on it. But if you go to this website, it's literally a website now a company runs, and you sign up, and the state will pay the company, they will consider that part of your homeschooling education. So I think that, again, like some of my fellow candidates, capitalism is at the heart of what's wrong here. We cannot give capitalist institutions the reins to run our schools. That is why I'm against charter schools in general. Because charter schools, 9 times out of 10, are corporate charters. They're not doing what they were originally intended to do. We need to give that money back into the hands of the community. If the community says they want a free school and they want to teach their kids what happened back in the day to their family, then we should be able to do it. That should be part of our I told you one more thing. We need free college for everyone.
Yeah, I support compulsory education 6 to 16 and lifelong tuition-free public education from pre-K and child care to college, technical school, adult education at public institutions. We gotta stop this privatization in these charter schools. They're scams, they're ripping off the public. There's so many criminal activities going on there. They're feeding at the public trough. We gotta oppose mayoral and state control. In a wrecking school district, just look at Philadelphia, Detroit, Newark. There, tell about Youngstown. We got to oppose tracking, which starts in New York City. They start testing people in kindergarten. We didn't even, when I was there, we just played. We didn't even see any letters till first grade. We should have academic and vocational tracks in all schools. Why are we rationing good education? In New York City, you get tracked into 2/3 of the high schools don't have physics classes. And this tracking starts in kindergarten. And what this is all about is segregation by economic class and race. Fine. In all those things, tracking, charters, and outside control make the segregation worse.
Yes, I do support compulsory education. I support our public schools. I am a member of the Youngstown, Ohio School Board, the only person running in this race who's held elected office. And my role in education has been to support the people's power over our future. That's what public schools represent, the community coming together to support the ability to shape the future. And in my town, Youngstown, which has suffered severe economic setbacks, the hope that people have for their children is much of what they are clinging to. And unfortunately, the state takeover in our district means the corporate will setting. Don't think that the only privatization is charter schools, because when you have a state takeover, what happens is contractors swoop in to also monetize our children and monetize the failure and facilitate and accelerate the school-to-prison pipeline, and it's got to stop. For me, education was a ticket out. That's how I got into Princeton and through 3 law degrees, and I want to see that for every single American. And in a majority-minority district like ours, we have to stop allowing corporatist interests through the governmental officials they control to monetize minority students' failure. I am on in this race in order to make sure we have equal opportunities for all.
We have 2 more questions left for the candidates. Homelessness is expected to rise by 20% over the next 5 to 10 years. And so how will you address that? You are President of the United States. And what is your solution to unequal pay for equal work? We can start here with Dr.
All right, so I mentioned earlier there is a human right to housing. And that's something I support as a candidate. It's a human right to housing, to food, and we have to make sure that we provide for that as a government. It's a basic human need. And that's something that we're going to do on an equal basis for everyone. We're going to deal with this homelessness problem head on by ensuring that we reach out through governmental partnerships to get every single person the housing that they need and they deserve. Human dignity demands it. When we talk about unequal pay, there are many different fronts to unequal pay. There is a gender gap, and we have to deal with that. There's a definite gender disparity in pay, but there's also a racial disparity. And when you add the two together, you have black women earning 61 cents on the dollar compared to black men, compared to white men. And the disparity that creates is a very stark picture of the America that we live in, one in which people of color are devalued, even down to the cent in this country. What we have to do is institute laws to make sure that we change the effect, not just the, we have to make sure we institute laws to change the effect of.
The Green Guarantee, it does include, it's the quality of life for everybody. Food, housing, shelter, you know, your basic things that people have. Again, if we organize our resources from all the reclaimed world, all these broken down houses, there's plenty of places to house people. So we're not in need of land, we're not in need of houses, we're in need of leadership in order to make this stuff happen. We need a party, we need a place for people to go, and the party needs to be the one leading this. We can do this ourselves. We can organize all these resources ourselves. Every day when they rebuild or they do something, work on a house, there's always material that they throw away, or they burn, they get rid of it. Tons and tons and tons. There's a guy in my city, which is little town, there's 2,600 people in my town. It's what we've been doing for 25 years. He's been taking all his reclaimed wood and he makes things out of it. You can go on Etsy, you can go on Pinterest, there's tons of things. And that's a job program, is showing people how to use these tools, how to do these things, and by organizing these resources, we can put people in these places where they need to go and get it fixed.
Okay, well, housing is an economic human right. Every person has a right to have a good place to live, and we need to implement that for everyone. 10 years ago, there was this subprime mortgage debacle, and millions of people lost their homes, and the Obama administration gave trillions of dollars to bail out the banks, not the people. And we need reparations to all those people who lost their homes in this subprime mortgage debacle, which was disproportionately black people. So we need reparations for that. There are black communities around the country that were leveled and they put through like freeways and stadiums and stuff, and we need to have reparations for those communities and restore those communities. And in general, we need to move away from this idea of like real estate speculators owning the housing. We need community control of housing.
Two big subjects, one short time. Housing, I worked as a social worker for veterans for about 6 years before I was fired in May because we were a nonprofit and we're losing funding. I know that the best thing for anybody in any situation that they're in is to have a stable home. If they have mental health issues, if they have a stable home, a lot of those issues can be addressed in a more efficient manner with stable housing. I believe housing is a human right. We need to extend that throughout the government. We need to reduce the incentive for banks to foreclose on homes. Part of my reparations program included property and housing reparations. And as far as pay inequality, we need to show that everybody needs to talk to each other about their income and their pay. That's the only way that we will know where the income inequality is and start to focus on where we need to address the income inequality when we have that education.
Back in Baltimore, an organization came to town that claimed to represent the poor. And they came to us and Reverend Chambers and Public Housing, and they said, we're all the poor people. We want to put them on display for our next project. And we said, they're right there. They're in the churches that you all claim to represent. They said, no, we don't see any. So we've got an activist in our community named Bonnie Laney. And she said, yeah, there's homeless literally amongst the people in your church. I don't think you understand this, but we've been feeding them. The Green Party has been out there literally feeding the homeless. And then when we learned about this, we made sure that one young man in particular who was homeless, who was a church member, who was part of this organization that claimed to help the poor, got housed. And then we made sure that he became a RAB delegate. And now he gets to fight with my mentor, Reverend Andy Chambers, whenever Ben Carson tries to destroy public housing. And on top of that, we have to make sure we understand the fact that public housing is being destroyed by Democrats as much as it's being destroyed by Republicans. Democrats are the one in my city of Baltimore trying to tear down public housing. The Obama administration literally privatized almost all public housing that happened under Obama. So that's why it's time to go Green Party on this issue.
We can end homelessness by having the government guarantee everybody the right to a decent home. First step is universal rent control. The rent is too damn high, that's why homelessness is rising. The private housing market has never provided affordable housing for low-income people. They work the upscale side of things because that's where the money's to be made. So we need a new commitment to public housing done the right way, instead of segregating poor people of color, isolated away from transportation, grocery stores, medical, hospitals, and so forth. We need to have mixed income, public housing like they do in Europe. Professionals, working class, poor people all living together. It'll be a desegregation program, a great jobs program. It'll be a clean energy program because it'll be powered by clean energy, and we can integrate it with the public transportation system to have walkable communities, which is an ecological thing. And it does all that as well as affordable housing. This should be a major commitment. It's something that the March on Washington 63, the Freedom Budget 66, and the Poor People's Campaign was essential demand to get us back to work and get people into homes.
Okay, your last question, which will affect you, I'm sure. If you were to become president, how would you alleviate voter suppression and gerrymandering that affects Black communities and people of color? And we'll start with Dennis.
I think one of the best things that we can do is reinstitute the Voting Rights Act, along with all the enforcements that are there. We need to have automatic registration for voting. We have to make it safer, easier, and faster for a lot of people. The reason why a lot of people don't vote is not because it is that difficult, but the times that a lot of people have the opportunity to vote does not coincide with their work schedule. So it leaves a lot of the working people out. In our state of Ohio, they got rid of some of the weekend voting, which a lot of the minority communities would begin, a bus or a car and take several people at a time to their local polling places to vote. So with the technology that's available, we can make it easier and more available for people to register as well as vote, and participation is key.
This is the last question? And is there a closing statement or no? This is it.
This is your last question.
But is there going to be a closing statement or not?
Yes.
Oh, there will. Okay. Okay. So I take a different view of this. I've heard the arguments for increasing voting. I personally feel that the right direction is a federal level voting system. We have a state-by-state voting system in this country. We should move that system to the federal level. And the reason I say that is because, look, in Baltimore, you could just see the election irregularities pile up and pile up and pile up. We get so many of them, so many calls come into my office whenever we run a Green for office. It's absolutely insane. And on top of that, we have to start talking about ranked choice voting, proportional representation. The system needs to be changed. The entire way that we do representative government should really be tossed on its head. That's why my campaign is actually doing something amazing. We are calling for an open source platform. Anyone can go to my website and actually put in your ideas onto our platform. You should be able to vote. Voting should be a national holiday. You should actually look at a paper trail, but you should be able to vote by phone. It's a technology that we should start to research and really think about, because voting should be a universal right directly available to every single person.
Well, obviously, we need to reinstate the pre-clearance provision in the Voting Rights Act to get rid of all this voter ID and all these other ways they're suppressing the votes that they're targeting, which tends to be Black votes who would vote for Democrats, Republicans doing it. But the Democrats do it too. We had a big instance in the primary in 2016 in Brooklyn and her Bernie Sanders. That was machine politics. We got to deal with party suppression as part of voter suppression. You know, the working class doesn't vote in this country. They don't like the two major parties. Most of them don't vote because they feel, not they're apathetic, they're alienated. They feel the two parties don't speak to them, so they ain't going to affirm those two parties by giving them their vote. So we got to get the Green Party and alternatives on the ballot. In the UK, you want to run for the House of Commons, it's 10 signatures. In this country, you want to vote for Congress, it's thousands of signatures. You people in Indiana and Ohio know how hard it is to get on the ballot. That's voter suppression too. And finally, gerrymandering is irrelevant if we have proportional representation. Multi-member districts, don't matter how the districts is wrong, because every party will get their fair share of representation and votes. And, one more sentence? One more sentence?
2 seconds. I don't know.
We need, instead of an electoral college, we need a national popular vote with instant runoff voting or ranked choice voting.
To finish off my last point earlier, we need to deal with the effects of discrimination and pay scale, not just pay lip service to them. We need reform of the EEOC and the laws it enforces, and we need to deal with the hurdles to get an effective remedy to employment discrimination. Now, talking about voter suppression and gerrymandering, we need to end those racist voter ID laws, folks. We need to deal with the fact that portions of the Voters' Rights Act have been nullified, and they are being nullified by state takeovers that take away the choice from people over things as basic as education. And when we talk about gerrymandering, I agree with the idea that when we have a fundamental overhaul of our democratic system, that issues like that will recede into the background because we need proportional representation, we need ranked choice, we need more options for people. And when it comes to control over that new democratic system, we need to make sure that the people have oversight and insight into all of it, that they are engaged and involved with controlling how we deal with the democratic deficit that exists and persists in this country.
Yeah, party suppression, I think Howard was right about that, but he doesn't want to talk about the party suppression that's going on in this party where he has co-chairs that are having the fixes in. And I don't know if you're actually talking about the Socialist Party suppression, or you're talking about the Green Party, because you're a member of the Green, the Socialist Party since the 70s, I believe. And it is the question. I'm sticking to the question. It's about voter suppression. Right, okay, so how can we get there unless we have a place to go where people have integrity? And if a candidate is now registered or otherwise a party member of any other state, national, political party in the original primary state or residence, except for the state party which is affiliated with GPUS, or a party forming for the intent of GPUS affiliation in a state where there is no GPUS affiliated state party. Basically, since that you are a Socialist Party member and you're running for the primary, you're not supposed to be up there. And if we're talking about integrity, you want to talk about gerrymandering, you want to talk about changing things, let's change the way we run things first.
And how we get to 30 seconds. Please respond. No more comments, please.
Yeah, I'm a socialist. I belong to the Socialist Party. I belong to the People's Party when the Socialist Party formed. I joined them both to try to bring them together. I'm seeking the Socialist Party nomination as well as the Green Party nomination. I'm trying to build unity on the left. And as far as, what did he say, steering committee people or? Yeah, that's not happening.
I'm saying that the
Excuse
rules.
me.
He asked what I said. Did not ask what I said.
No yelling, please.
Don't talk down to somebody then, if he asked what I said.
Well, look, the steering committee people are not going to decide who our nominee is. You are, the members of the Green Party, through your delegates at the convention.
But you cheat with your team.
That's point of order.
Let's be orderful here, but not orderful when it comes to how the way the party is ran. That's right. We can break rules as long as it's for Howie, but not for somebody else to actually have something to say. Sorry? No, sir. You're gonna have to. Listen, please, go ahead. Who? I'm sorry, who? It's almost done. Finish up.
This is ridiculous. Come on,
Finish up.
They were.
You want to suppress some more? You want to suppress some more? This is how the Green Party operates?
No, just let him go. Please be conclusive. Let everybody speak.
Hey, I'm trying to too.
You can only speak when it's your time to speak, that's it.
Okay, well,
First of all, there are a lot of socialist parties, and I don't have a problem with people like working with socialist parties or being a member of socialist parties, but the Socialist Party USA is not an anti-imperialist party. The International Socialist Organization that Howie has done a lot of work with is an imperialist party that supported the wars against Syria and Libya. That they went to rallies against Gaddafi every week instead of going to anti-war rallies. And Howie has sponsored an ISO forum, like for the so-called Syrian revolution. His work on Syria has been about like overthrowing the Syrian government, not stopping U.S. intervention in Syria. There's a guy, Anand Gopal, who works for an organization that's funded by the State Department, invests millions of dollars, and how he cites this guy for his information to denounce the Syrian government. And on Sunday and Monday, I'm going to the People's Mobilization against to stop the U.S. war machine, which is going to have dignitaries from countries like Bolivia, Cuba, Iran, Syria, Nicaragua, and Zimbabwe there, because I stand in solidarity with people in governments of countries that the U.S. is attacking.
Okay, I just want to say, every time we mention the candidate's name, he gets to respond, and I think we're ready to hear the speaker. So
Okay.
if Howie wants to respond to that, he can, but I just want you guys to know, each time you mention somebody's name, they get to respond
If you
to
want to
that.
give him the actual criteria.
I gotta take the point. Wait, I gotta say something.
I'm sorry, we're running out of time. We have guest speakers, and so we have extended our courtesy to all the presidential candidates at this point in time. I'm going to ask you all to continue on. If there's time at the end, after everyone has answered their questions, I will refer this back to Howie because he has a right to respond to that. But at this time, we need to keep this going so that we can get the presidential candidate, the guest speakers up. We're running out of time.
Closing statements now?
Answer the question. Whatever the questions are, what's next?
We finished with that.
Closing statement.
30 seconds.
30-second closing statement. I'm Dennis Lambert. I'm running for president. My website is www.dlpotus2020.com. My platform is ending all wars, $25 minimum wage, Medicare for all, and renewable infrastructure. That should be 30 seconds.
Thanks.
I just got to say, my fellow Green Party candidate is not wrong. Something stinks in the Green Party, and we got to fix it. We don't have any credibility if we don't actually do voting rights in our own party. So that being said, I am an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-colonialist candidate who wants a revolutionary socialism now, fundamentally changing our economic system today. And you can go to schlacking.com right now, and you can add your own 2 cents about my platform. Because this is what it means to be a revolutionary socialist. Open up a platform for every single person to get their opinion and thought in there. Thank you.
Well, in the introduction, I want to talk a little bit about party building. My campaign is trying to help the states as best we can by paying petitioners to help you get on the ballot. When we do that, we want to have organizer training. Greens are good activists. We show up. We don't know the organizing skills that a union or community organizer knows. And we need that because we've got to expand our base among working class youth and people of color. So we're going to try to help the Greens with that way. We want to build unity on the Greens and on the left too, because we got some messages for the social movement. They got some problems too, and I don't have time to elaborate.
I want to say thank you to all our residents. I'm sorry, Doreen.
The last three.
One of my favorite things is to see the parents and grandparents of the students that I've served at the voting booth, because to me that's a connection between the students that I help empower and the generations that came before them. It's very important to see that community empowerment, and that's what I'm all about. I used to be a behavioral specialist at the school, and I dealt with a lot of students who were angry all the time. And I get why they were angry all the time. The family life situation they had to deal with, conditioned by the systemic racism in this country, you would be angry all the time too. And I'm angry for that because it is not fair. But you know what else? I also know why the caged bird sings. We have to bring freedom to all Americans in this country and a sense of equal opportunity for all Americans, black, white, or whatever their background.
Because we're the party of toxic people. There are toxic people all up and down, mainly in our co-chairs. We have people that are doing things, greens for greens, under the guise of greens, a co-chair, but doesn't want to make it an official Green Party thing, because that means they will have to ask more people to go to it. Now, when you leave people out of the Green Party, when you talk down to them, do this, do that, oh, you're not doing anything, you're Republican, you're doing that. When you talk shit to people aren't gonna want to come to your party, and they're definitely not gonna stay when they get here. So if you want somebody that cares, ChannelWilson.us.
Okay, well, yeah, so one of the main reasons that I'm running in this process is because I was very disappointed that anti-war activists I know are supporting Howie Hopkins because he's an imperialist candidate. At the last debate, he said he supports these protests in Hong Kong. There are phony CIA-backed protests with people waving U.S. and UK flags asking for Hong Kong to be recolonized. And I don't know which countries the U.S. is going to be threatening or at war against next year, but how you might be supporting the pretext for war. Please vote for somebody else. It doesn't have to be me.
Okay, once again, I'd like to thank all our presidential candidates. At this time, I'm going to start introducing our guest speakers because we are now down to 35 minutes. But thank you all for coming and joining us in MUNCIE. And answering some very difficult questions. And here to tell you, most of the time this is very easy to deal with. But
You want us back to our seats?
pardon me?
You want us back to our seats?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
yes.
No, I am a leader. That's what I told you I did. Our first guest speaker is going to be Kim Flores. Kim Flores have 5 minutes to get her message out. So we're going to give Kim Flores to talk, an opportunity to talk about the Latino community that was not addressed tonight by our candidates. So here she goes.
Good evening, everyone. I am Kim Flores. I am Hispanic. My parents were also U.S. citizens. However, I have a topic that is part to me, and I'm trying to say it without crying. My husband is being detained here in MUNCIE, Delaware County. He cannot bail out because he is not a U.S. citizen. He has been falsely accused of a crime he did not commit. Our home was searched because we live in a predominantly black neighborhood. I grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood, and I continue to live in a predominantly black neighborhood. But as you see, I was categorized because of my color and because of my race and where I live. I was associated with drugs, violence. You can only imagine the things that my children saw, how the police acted towards us. See, they dragged my husband out of our vehicle. Didn't give him the opportunity. So in my mad yes, do I think that black and brown need to stick together? Yes! Why? Because we are being eliminated. We are being eliminated by education, by work. There is so much that is going on in this world, and that people are closing an eye. Yes, people can get up here and say, yes, I will be supportive, but once you get up on that platform, are you really going to be supportive towards us? Do you really going to stand up and promise what you're going to say you're going to do? Don't put on a show and give us statistics, because that's not how it's going to roll. You have to actually work and actually say what you're going to do. I don't know how many times I have had politicians come to my door saying, will you vote for me, and I will do this and I will do that. And do you think they gave me the time of day when my family is suffering? I am facing foreclosure. We are homeowners. My husband had 2 businesses. You see, he also gave opportunity to those that were battling drug addiction, alcohol addiction. He gave them jobs when nobody else did. An immigrant. but society wants to see him as an illegal immigrant. You see? He is not an illegal immigrant. As a matter of fact, my husband is an engineer. He has education. But because he's not from this country, he can't practice his occupation. And so guess what? Since my husband is detained, we are facing, like I said, foreclosure. We are on food stamps. We are on welfare. We are on WIC. The government wants to say that that illegal people are on government assistance. That is not true. My child is now attending a parochial school under a scholarship where his father used to pay $5,500 and did not bat an eye. Now I have to beg and I have to ask for help. I'm a U.S. citizen. And like I said, the police, when they came and searched my home, I was referred to as the Mexican. Do I call anybody white? Do I call anybody black? No, I call you by your name. If I know who you are or whatever you are, and I translated for this court system for over 20 years. You see? But now I'm on the other side of the fence. Put yourself in my shoes. Because it can happen. And then, like I said, my child has to face the fact that his father is not home. Going on 2 years. We're on the back burner. Can you imagine how many families across the U.S. children are suffering because of this? This is a hot topic. This should have been a topic that should have been addressed. I came here hoping to listen to that topic, but I did not hear it. Why? Why is it not a priority? We're playing with people's lives. We're playing with people's families. It's not right. My husband is not a criminal. He came here for a better life. He is from Mexico. He learned how to speak English. And as a matter of fact, I can tell you that my husband knows U.S. history better than someone that's been born here in the U.S. I'm sorry, Monica, but I just get so upset about this topic. Thank you. And I really hope y'all that are running, y'all can make a change about it.
I'm going to introduce Bishop Gregg Greer. He's known as a public speaker, an American journalist, a minister, and a social justice activist. He's a global citizen. Gregg Greer has lectured on global diversity, building social and civil responsibility, the life of Dr. King, civil rights, AIDS, HIV in the communities, American politics, and civil engagement, leadership, social activism, redefining American manhood, youth in America, and the African American experience, among other topics, at community centers and organizations of faith and religion. Bishop Gregg Greer has lectured at conferences and universities and for the private groups, in addition to schools, camps, prisons, and on the street of urban America. Please let me bring to you right now Bishop Gregg Greer. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm so humbled by Monica James, and I tell you what, myself and my extended family, the Hamptons, came down from Chicagoland to be here, and we would do it not for me, but we did it under her request. Her organized school. I'm going to be very short and moving because I know we have time. But I just want to say that today, we as a people have to begin to look at how we not only interact from a horizontal level, but a vertical level, meaning how we take leadership. In America today, there is such a need for urban leadership like never before. And we are hoping that these candidates, the folks, the brave men and women who are sitting here, can fill that void. For those who don't know me, my name is Bishop Gregg L.Greer, and I have actually organized and worked for some of the biggest civil rights cases in America. Tamir Rice, the young man who was shot in Cleveland, Ohio, I led and organized that case. We brought the lawyers in. The Stinney case, the youngest men executed in U.S. history, we overturned that case, fighting against Governor Haley in Manning, South Carolina. I am from Freedom Place International, and I am a former member of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. With all of that being said, the only message that I want to say is very simple. We thank the brave men and women who have stood here, the organizers of the Green Party, the leadership, and organizers around the community who can stand up, like this young man right here, and really be a voice for the community. Our common mission over the course of the next 50 years is to blend economic rights for people with the needs for civil rights and human rights. Economic rights, civil rights, human rights, and there's one other tenet to it. The way that we handle our environment. It is very important as we see polluted cities, air pollution. I just want to read for you some statistics. And again, I won't be long-winded, but listen, 4.6 million people die each year from causes attributed to air pollution in America. 4.6 million. Many mortalities from air pollution. Water pollution caused 8.6 million deaths in 2015 alone. These numbers are horrendous. Little known by folks who are not paying attention. Cyanides, gas, metals, hydrocarbons are affecting us by the millions in the greatest country, industrialized country in America, in the world, as America. What are we to do? Well, James Madison said it very well. He said we have to stand up and band together, groups of citizens, against what he called fractions. What are fractions? Special interests. People who act outside of public interest. And today, we are seeing changes. We are seeing changes like never before. I am so happy to be a part of this event. And I'm going to end it, Monica, I'm not going to be long, but a few miles from here, there was an organization that was started, for those who know. And their mandate was to do what? Their mandate was to oppress people, to hate people. Who knows what that organization is? Well, I'll tell you if you don't know. The Ku Klux Klan.
Yep.
Special interest hate group. What is it going to take? What is it going to take to stop these special interest groups? What is it going to take for these people who trump over the rights of the millions and are basically eliminating and thinking from the standpoint of not humanity, but from the standpoint of self? What is it going to take? It's going to take folks like you and I coming together in conversations, talking about the real issues, dealing with the issues face to face, real talk, right? We have to be able to intellectualize these and be educated about these issues. So as we enter into a new day and age, we have to see that change. The voice of America is not Washington, D.C. It's the brave women in these communities, you and I, the folks in these communities who work for a living every day. These are the heroes of the American experience. We have to take power and put it where it should be. So as we enter into a new day and age, we are to be that change. The person sitting next to you. And I'm going to go so far as to suggest that someone in these seats will be our next global leader, our next senator, our next president, our next vice president, our next ambassador to the United Nations. And I'm hoping that the message is very clear. We have to take the message away from the neocons and the top 10% who believe that no one else exists but them in the world. My mandate has to be to bring justice to all the people of the world. Not just to this nation, but to the world. Not just to this country, but we can't forget about the ghetto. Amen? Amen. So I want to thank you guys. I want you to, and if anyone has any questions, but I encourage you to continue on standing up for truth, standing up for justice, and standing up for the things that are going to make America change. And over the course of the next decade, the next generation, if we stand up, our voices resound loud enough, then we'll see a change, not just here where we stand, but around the world. And that change will be an effective change that will change our generations. So thank you for what you're doing. Continue the good work fighting on the front lines, and may God be with you.
Our next guest speaker is a phenomenal woman. We don't always hear about phenomenal women, but this woman is a Kurd in Jerry. Is a former member of the Illinois chapter of Black Panther Party. She is a survivor of December the 4th, 1969 assassination of Chairman Fred Hampton and Defense Captain Mark Clark. She is the widow of Chairman Fred and the mother of Chairman Fred Jr. And Jerry is the chairperson of the December the 4th committee, which fights to defend and maintain the legacy of the Black Panther Party. December the 4th, the coordinator with POCC, the annual August the 30th birthday celebration commemorative of Chairman Fred Hampton, and the Life Work commemorative events around the annual December the 4th International Revolutionary Day, the anniversary of the massacre on Monroe, the assassination of Chairman Fred and Defense Captain Mark Clark. And Jerry is the co-author of the proposal to name one Chicago block of 2300 West Monroe Chairman Fred Hampton Way. A campaign that exposed the dividing line between the interests of the state against the demands of the people. Let's keep talking about Jerry. Coordinates free clothing and fresh vegetables giveaway with the POCC and other survival programs. She also is on board of the advisory committee. So, she's not here right now. I'm going to read on and introduce Chairman Fred Hampton. He's Chairman Fred Hampton, August the 30th, 1948, December the 4th, 1964, was an American activist and revolutionary. Chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party and the deputy chairman of the National BPC, Hampton, and fellow Black Panther Mark Clark. In January 1970, held an inquest and ruled the deaths of Hampton and Clark to be justifiable homicide. However, a civil lawsuit was later filed on behalf of the survivors and the relatives of Hampton and Clark. It was eventually resolved in 1982 for a settlement of $1.85 million, with the city of Chicago and Cook County and the federal government each paying a third to a group of nine plaintiffs. So, please allow me to introduce Chairman Fred Hampton Jr., his son, on behalf of the Illinois Black Panther Group. Thank you.
I'm Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. I'm honored and humbled to be here today. My mother, who's just will be with us shortly. In my introduction, I'd like to say that I feel fortunate to have fallen from the tree of two freedom fighters, that of Chairman Fred Hampton and also McCoy and Jerry, formerly known as Deborah Johnson. Chairman Fred Hampton was the deputy chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. In fact, on his tenure, became the largest chapter of the Black Panther Party. The programs, the survival programs of the Black Panther Party, such as the first free breakfast program. In the city of Chicago, we fed a minimum of 3,500 children a week. Also, such fees that were incorrectly given credit to the other people. The deal was the actual Rainbow Coalition was a revolutionary act implemented by Chairman Fred Hampton. And the city that was remains to be one of the top segregated cities in the country. Black Panther Party had the free medical center, a number of other different survival programs. And even at the federal government's own account, they said the Black Panther Party was in existence. There was a record low to the government referred to as black-on-black crime. Many people position that, well, if that's the case, the government should have allowed them some sort of reward for the great work they were doing. However, the work that Chairman Fred, the Black Panther Party, were engaging in, it threatened the economy, it threatened the lifestyle of this system. They were targeted by the infamous COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program. In fact, former director of VIJ, who said the Black Panther Party represented the #1 threat to internal security to the United States is that of the Civil War. When the COINTEL program, out of their mouth, they articulated this program created to discredit, to dismiss, to disrupt, to destroy any black nationalist movements, especially amongst the youth. Over 90% of that program was directed to the Black Panther Party. It consisted of tactics, but not limited to, the assassination, and we stress those terms. In fact, our position is that we should use brutal terms for brutal realities. It consisted of tactics such as the assassination of Lil Bobby Hutton, 17 years old, April 6, 2 days after the government assassinated Dr. King. They assassinated Bobby Hutton in Oakland, California in 1968. It consisted of tactics of forcing such individuals as Asada Shakur into political exile, who is still in political exile to this day. It also consists of tactics that we refer to as the massacre on my road. Again, the massacre on my road. December 4th is one of the days which we define as one of our September 11 stories. We say African people, a term we use, the OVs, the original victims of terrorism. People have been terrorized with such euphemisms as slavery, Jim Crow, red line, and gentrification, so on and so forth. The U.S. government via the Chicago Police Department came in approximately 4:35 in the morning, blocked the entire block of Illinois phone trucks, a floor plan of the house so detailed that even a pack of cigarettes would most likely be had. They came and the Chicago police immediately shot and assassinated then 22-year-old defense captain Mark Clark. They continued to shoot other occupants who said, stop shooting, we have a pregnant sister now. That pregnant sister they were referring to was at the time my mother-to-be. Then, who literally just turned 19 years old days prior. She literally felt the shells coming in through the mattress. She covered down over her comrade, her husband, Chairman Fred, because she had recognized he was moving unusually slowly and was later exposed after the independent autopsy that the state had an agent provocateur placed enough Signal, enough knockout drug in his Kool-Aid to technically knock the horse out. The Chicago police came in and pulled my mother to be outside the room, opened the road that she was on. In fact, it was Chairman Fred's road. They opened the road and jammed the Chicago Police Department's revolver to her stomach. Again, she was 8.5 months pregnant. The first piece of, I said on many occasions, the first piece of steel that I've ever came into contact with, the prenatal care that I received, as opposed to the doctor's stethoscope, was Chicago Police Department's revolver. To add insult to injury, the Chicago police went inside the room, they were overheard saying he's barely alive, they're barely making it. They fired several more shots. And those are the fatal shots that assassinated the then 21-year-old Chairman Fred. They locked my mother to be and the remaining survivors up. It would be ideal if we could say how bad things were back in the 60s. We've come a long way. Deal is, I'm honored and humbled to chair the Black Panther Party because the organization that is, we say not walking in the footsteps, but just walking the paw steps, the Panther paw steps of the Black Panther Party. A major campaign we're dealing with right now is to actually say the childhood home with Chairman Fred have to be in the process of turning into a museum. Thanks to the people, we cut it down this past September 9th, saving from the banks, but how we still fight to restore it, you know what I'm saying, maintain it to get it turned to a museum. Other pressing campaigns we're dealing with, that of demanding the freedom release of Jail in Africa, the Move 9, other members of the movement, the Move organization was still locked up. We're based in Chicago, which is infamously referred to as Chirac. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people say, well, they have an issue with that term. We add on to the old saying and say, God created Africans and America made niggas. We say that the marriage of the machine manufactured in Chirac. What's happening in Chicago is a microcosm of what's happening in Baltimore, Cleveland, in fact, any other colonized community. The opposition is that we're dying by design. We don't have a reactionary response to say, well, just black on black crime. We draw the correlation to the fact of such entities as Norfolk Railroad that on a weekly basis, hundreds of assault rifles, you know, sit right in the heart of Inglewood, literally dropping to these children's arms. We use this is war tactics. The quote-unquote music, at the time that they play to these children, these are propaganda bombs being dropped on these children. The chemical biological warfare, the type of drugs, the type of plantation poison, what have you, is flooded through our communities. These are dynamics that impact our community. And the disadvantage our community has as opposed to other communities is not an acknowledged war. Other, you know, say other communities said that at least they just up front. You use terms like political prisoners, chemical, biological warfare, police containment. So we're struggling with heightened contradictions. So we'll say again, kind of like the Alcoholics Anonymous say, the first step in addressing the problem is recognize we have a problem. So that's the thing we're dealing with. And we're not just local in Chicago. You know, so we're an international organization. You know what I'm saying? Just even a few hours ago, get the word about Jordan Griffin, 18 years old, shot 5 times by Long Beach, California police. You know what I'm saying? These are different campaigns that we're touching on and fighting exposed. And again, our position is that ain't no war on drugs, there's no war on guns, there's no war on gangs, there's war on our people. And as Minister UEP News said, if we don't fight back, it can be defined as nothing less than reactionary suicide. I heard some terms up here today. Voter suppression, so on and so forth. We have a little more, like, on the voter suppression in our community. It's common when the police come through, they say once the election time, they blatantly come through with extra sweeps around election time to take us from the community. So these are more graphic details on the terms I heard they use up here. So I'm honored and humbled to be here. So to get on the ground, what's going on out there. In fact, with Black Panther Party Cubs, we say the streets are our office. Our work hours are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our secretaries are those brothers and sisters you see out there in the community. So again, our desk is the gangways, you know what I'm saying, in alleyways, it's our desk. Yeah. So we're not a state-sanctioned organization.
That's right.
We are service of the people, and organized, we kind of like we refer to as the last call for alcohol. We're not, you know what I'm saying, we're not we don't have the appearance, you know what I'm saying, a lot of organizational individuals who are propped up by the state and say, okay, this is your representative. But we are the ones, they don't say, when people exhaust all women, they say, where the Cubs at? Now we're listening to the Black Panther Party Cubs are coming, the Black Panther Party Cubs are coming, the Black Panther Party Cubs are here. So again, we are honored to be here. So talk about some different campaigns. Another major campaign we have is the AAT bill, the African Anti-Terrorism Bill. This has been a proposition that has been, even for more than a decade, the Black Panther Party Cubs have been pushing. It's been our response, even when Barack Obama was running for senator, we took the stage at Hip Hop Summit, and people said, well, you should approach him, he's going to be one of the first black senators. Our position then, even when people was taking Obama troops, our position back then, when it was unpopular, we don't care if he would be the first black Martian. What's his position about, you know what I'm saying, political prisons, reparations, you know what I'm saying, and terrorism going in our community? So that's so people say, what about this candidate, what about this candidate? Our position is, what's your position about the terrorism that our people, our communities are subjected to under such euphemisms and gentrification? We say, no, it's not gentrification, it's a land grab. This new housing this government has planned for our people is the penitentiaries and the graveyard. Those Cook County Jail, those are not, Rikers Island, these are not correctional centers, they are concentration camps. In fact, we say the term police brutality. That's a euphemism. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? The deal is police terrorism. You know what I'm saying? So again, you have to use brutal terms to brutal reality. That's what you know what I'm saying? Again, because the deal is it is embarrassing. It is, and I'll be the first statement. It is embarrassing being oppressed. It is embarrassing being oppressed.
Yes, it is.
You know what I'm saying? But the deal is, we have to be armed with a politics that does not force us into absolution to have reactionary responses. We can be a victim, but a fighting back victim. You know what I'm saying? You know, the Sandinista said like the government, that the will of the people is better than a man's technology. Again, this is one of the strengths and one of his Achilles heels is how it's able to operate in the dark. We say, let's move forward, turn the lights on, heighten the contradictions, and move forward, trying to find out demarcation. Whose interest do you work in instead of the people? Power to the people. Free all right.
L.Greer and Jerry, would you like to come up front?
Well, yeah.
You know, we're waiting on you.
Okay.
You know I'm not coming back here, right? No, you don't have to come back here. No, put her in the front. Just put her in the middle aisle right here. She'll be fine. We'll bring the mic to her. Thank you.
First of all, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Bishop Greer, and Sister here for making this possible. And thank all of you who have stayed. My name is Kua and Jerry. My government name is Deborah Johnson. I'm the widow of Chairman Fred Hampton Sr. of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, who was assassinated on December 4, 1969, along with Defense Captain Mark Clark. I was the pregnant girl that was in the apartment where they jammed a gun to my pregnant belly and told me I better not try to escape and handcuffed me behind my back. This is the 50th year of the anniversary of that assassination, and we refer to it as one of our ground zeros. They talk about the towers and the buildings that were blown up and the people murdered, assassinated on 9/11, September 11th. But they don't want to talk about the crimes that have been committed. And there's some debate if those crimes were committed by the U.S. government, those bombings. So that's whole nother discussion. But they want to limit the discussion of the terrorism, the assassinations that occur on U.S. soil by the U.S. government. And that's one of the most brutal that we can refer to in recent times. I don't have enough time to go through everything that happened December 4th, but I'm here to say that people over periods of time have gotten disillusioned with the whole process. They've gotten disillusioned when they tell us if you go to school to get a good education, you can be free. If you join the military, you can be free. If you join an organization that is sponsored by the government or rich philanthropists that dictate how your organization move, then you could be free. If you vote, you could be free. Nowhere in the history of the world has freedom been elected. People have become so disillusioned with the processes that have been dangled in front of them that the only thing they want to hear is action. Action that speaks louder than words. We can't get the vote, then show them what we're going to do. Because we're in a period where there are more black elected officials than there were probably during Reconstruction. We're coming off of a period where we were told if we elect a black president, then everything will be all right. And the plight of black people was, I can't say the least thing he addressed. I don't remember him ever addressing it. It's always been like a beat up on how messed up we are. That's all we got. But it's still people that drank Obama juice. I ain't beating up on them. Good luck to them. Hope they feel well. But they also waiting on the tooth fairy to come and give them a gift. So I am honored and privileged in this period to be on the advisory board of the Prisoners of Conscience Committee that is headed by Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. I really hate to speak behind him because, I can't even, carry the enthusiasm and the facts that he brings right to the forefront.
I fall from the tree of true freedom fighters. Chairman Fred Hampton also cool.
Thank you so much. But I am really honored to be a member of the advisory board, one of the members of the advisory board of POCC, Prisoners of Conscience Committee, Black Panther Party, Caucus. And I can honestly say that's the only organization that I see, that I have seen over a period of time that has been consistent in fighting in the interest of the people. They're not government funded. They're out here on the street 24/7. You'd be surprised at the calls that they get, 1 or 2 in the morning, to go to jail, go to the precinct for somebody's son who got beat up by the police and dragged down the street. The newspapers and the radio stations, for the most part, have been given an order, and TV cameras, not to print or interview them or ask them for anything. So it's a lot of people
to raise a question from the bear shit in the woods, because they don't see the bear shit in the woods. Because you don't see them in state media, which again is an arm of the state to what? To perpetuate the goodness of the state, just like education. They're not building education institutions to educate you on how to survive and fight back, but how to maintain the status quo, the government that is, not to find any kind of independence. But POCC, without government funds, you know, without what people my age, most of y'all are younger, without a pot to piss in or window to throw it out of, have done tremendous work in the communities that they're in. They have turned things around. They have established community gardens. You say, there ain't no big things, a lot of community gardens all around. But they're locked. They're gated, they're locked. The community gardens that the Black Panther Party Caucus has started, anybody could come there and pick some greens, tomatoes, onions, squash, any number of vegetables. Also, each Black Panther Party Club chapter is mandated to do a CCC, Children Community Cubs, once a week. Clothing is given away. They discuss with the people the issues that are going on in the community. Now listen, as I tell you all of this organization is not up for grabs. They have a clear political line. You understand what I'm saying? And that political line is power belongs in the hands of the people. And that there is power in the people. And their logo is free of all. We believe that Black people have been disproportionately, that's a little fake mile word, locked up in the prisons, as you say, as concentration camps, as we say, all over this country. And we're not the majority population, so they tell us. So I'm just here to say it's going to be very important that we save the Hampton House. Why? People say every campaign that the Prisoners of Conscience Committee, Black Panther Party Cubs, has taken on has highlighted issues that impact communities all over. This predatory lending that is going on, this house that Chairman Fred Hampton Sr. grew up in is a prime example of that. We have not just talked about saving his house, but exposing this predatory lending that has caused so many Black and minorities, as they call them, and poor whites, everybody, to lose houses that they worked hard for 2 or 3 jobs for years on end. The mama, the dad, and even the children were to maintain this housing that's been snatched from under them. So the importance of this, if you see the transformation that's happened in the community behind the elementary school that Chairman Fred went to, a few blocks away from the high school he went to, a couple of blocks down the street from where he was framed on a bogus ice cream truck robbery, accused of stealing, robbing a Good Humor ice cream truck. I don't allow Good Humor in my house to this day, of $71 worth of ice cream, and send him to a maximum security, send him to a maximum security prison, Menard, where they did chemical testing. You know, when these pharmaceutical companies want to try different experiments on new drugs they're going to make billions of and feed them into communities, they did the testing in Menard, which was way down south towards the end of the state line, where the economy was booming because they were imprisoning large numbers of Black people and what they call minorities. You understand what I'm saying? So this center, which we have been fighting to make a museum that people have come and donated Panther memorabilia, posters, pictures, and we've done many tours. They've done many tours there, and they also had movie nights and different events. Twice a year we do an event. Just came off of the Chairman Fred Streets Party, which is an annual birthday celebration, August 30th for Chairman Fred. We do a 5-minute silent vigil. Now the same building that Chairman and Defense Captain Mark Clark were assassinated in is not still there. It's another building. So right in front of that, standing in front of it, we do a 5-minute silent vigil, and People come from all over the country, all over the world. We just had Janine Africa released, released after 41 years of incarceration. She came. Pan Africa, Minister of Confrontation, for Moon. She came and they spoke. And it wasn't a dry eye in the place. And other venues picked them up and had them come and speak there. People came from California, Pittsburgh, all over the country. And other people from outside the country were trying to make it, you know, but they just couldn't, you know, get the funds and stuff together. So I'm saying to you, I don't subjectively sit here and ask you to help save the Hampton House. I objectively sit here and say we must save the Hampton House. So that this type of organizing that allows the people to come in and participate in their own interests, showing them by example, not what we're going to promise to do, but showing them what can be done with little enough, and my time is up. So I want everyone in here to, if you could make a donation to save the Hampton House, you can go to PayPal, Chairman Fred Jr. at gmail.com. I'm not social media type, so I have to look at him and make sure I get it right. But you can do that. PayPal.com. Y'all know about PayPal, right? I know everybody know about PayPal. I just learned about it. And you go to Chairman Fred Jr. at gmail.com and you can make a donation. Or you can do it old school. You could slip a bill or two in his hand or my hand and say, this is for Save the Hampton House. Old black people know what I'm talking about. How you doing? But you do it wrong thing. Anyway, thank you for this time. I appreciate it and hope we get invited back. And thank you so much for making this possible. Appreciate you very much.
So let me read on. It's a certificate, a lifetime of excellence. This award is presented to express our community and our nation's deep appreciation for having the courage to continue and strive for justice, and for the outstanding leadership above and beyond great personal tragedy. We are forever grateful in recognition for your enduring commitment to this movement. This award is from Indiana Underground Activist Network, Freedom First International, and East Central Indiana Greens. We want to say thank you for coming tonight. We want to say we love you and we appreciate it. Thank you so much. And she didn't even tell me, you just know,
I can't believe they kept a secret from me. Thank you so much.
We're going to ask all, give me 1 second. I want to give Howie 30 seconds. I did promise Howie 30 seconds, and I'm going to keep my word to this man. And then I'm going to ask all the presidential candidates to come forward and take a picture with our guests. We really appreciate them traveling this far from Chicago, Illinois to be with us. So thank you.
For the record, I did not support military intervention in Syria or Libya. Neither did the Socialist Party USA, neither did the International Socialist Organization, neither did Anand Gopal. I think the issue is we don't support states that oppress their people. We support working class and oppressed people fighting for their freedom and their democracy. That's where the difference is. But the U.S. played a reactionary role to the extent it intervened in Syria because they didn't support the democratic revolution any more than any of the other dozen interveners, you know, the Gulf states, Russia, Iran, and so forth. But never supported
and defended Syria from Al-Qaeda, who were armed by the U.S. and sent in there.
And Assad.
There was a U.S. invasion of Syria.
Regime change.
The
FBI and the
We need everybody to come out front that was a presidential candidate and take a picture with Bishop Gregg L.Greer, Chairman Fred Hampton, and Sister Akua and Jerry. Thank you.
Guess I'll just go down the line.
Okay.